There is one skill that separates people who consistently win in life from those who constantly exhaust themselves trying. And it has nothing to do with working harder, being smarter, or wanting things more intensely. It has everything to do with how willing you are to release your grip. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why your attachment to outcomes is the very thing blocking them. And there is one specific moment in this story where everything you thought you knew about ambition will be turned completely upside down. Most people were taught that caring deeply means holding on tightly. That passion looks like obsession, that if you want something badly enough, you should think about it constantly. Protect it fiercely and never let go. And so you grip. You grip your goals, your relationships, your reputation, your plans. You grip so hard your necklace you go white, and then you wonder why everything feels so heavy. Here's what nobody told you. Attachment is not love. Attachment is fear wearing the costume of ambition. The emotion underneath all of this, the one driving every anxious refresh of your inbox, every moment you rehearse a conversation in your head before it happens, every night you cannot sleep because the outcome is still uncertain, that emotion is fear, not passion, not drive, fear of losing, fear of failing, fear of being seen as not enough. And fear, no matter how sophisticated it looks from the outside, is one of the worst navigators you will ever hand to will to. So think about the last time you wanted something so badly that you could feel it in your chest. A job, a person, a deal, a response. You probably sent the follow-up email too soon, said too much, pushed when you should have waited. And whatever you were reaching for, pulled back. That is not bad luck, that is physics. Desperation has a frequency, and the things you most want can feel it before you even walk into the room. But here's where it gets interesting, because strategic detachment is not indifference. It is not apathy dressed up in spiritual language. The people who master this are not cold people. They are not disconnected from reality. In fact, they care more than almost anyone around them. They have simply learned to separate their identity from the result. There is a man, a negotiator, who worked for decades in some of the most high-stakes environments imaginable, who once said that the moment he stopped needing the deal to close was the exact moment he started closing every deal. Not because he stopped caring about his work, but because when you are no longer afraid of walking away, you become the most powerful person in any room. Everyone can feel it, and no one can explain exactly why. So that is the paradox at the center of strategic detachment. The less you need something to define you, the more naturally it comes toward you. This is not mysticism. This is psychology, neuroscience, and human behavior all pointing in the same direction. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Your nervous system, when attached and afraid, operates in a contracted state. Your thinking narrows, your creativity drops, you start making decisions from scarcity. You become reactive instead of strategic, you lose the very qualities, clarity, confidence, and patience. That would exactly get you what you want. Meanwhile, the person operating from detachment is relaxed enough to think clearly, secure enough to be patient, and free enough to take a bold action without needing it to work out perfectly. Now, here's the question most people never stop to ask. What exactly are you attached to? Not that the goal itself, go deeper than that. Are you attached to being right? To being chosen? To proving something to someone who may not even be watching anymore? Because sometimes the outcome you are gripping so tightly is not even something you genuinely want. It is something you decided you needed years ago in a very different version of your life to feel safe or worthy or loved. That realization lands differently for everyone, but it lands. Strategic detachment begins with a single honest question. Who would you be without this specific outcome? Not who would you pretend to be, not the version of you performing peace while internally collapsing. Who would you actually be? And more importantly, could that version of you function? Could that version still take action, still show up, still create? If the answer is yes, then you are not dependent on the outcome. You are simply working toward it. And that difference changes everything about how you move. People who have practiced this describe as it's the first real breath they have taken in years. Not because their circumstances change immediately, but because they stopped outsourcing their stability to things outside of their control. They stopped making their sense of self conditional, and in doing so, they became genuinely difficult to destabilize. Rejection didn't break them, delays didn't spiral them, uncertainty didn't shut them down. Here's something worth sitting with. The most effective people in almost every field, athletes, artists, leaders, entrepreneurs, share one invisible thread. They are fully committed to the process and genuinely unattached to being validated by the result. They train as if everything depends on it and then walk into competition as if nothing does. That psychological stance is not accidental. It is cultivated deliberately over time through practice and honest self-examination. And there is a very specific moment, one you may have already lived without recognizing it, where detachment becomes a choice. It usually arrives disguised as loss, as rejection, as the door closing on something you were absolutely certain was yours. In that moment, most people collapsed inward, convinced that the closing of that door means something is fundamentally wrong with them. But a small number of people do something different. They stand at the closed door and instead of beginning it to open, they turn around and see an entire hallway they had been ignoring. That turning around is a strategic detachment in its most raw form. It is not giving up. It is refusing to let one closed door become a ceiling. The strategy itself is not complicated, but it requires honesty most people avoid. You define what you want with total clarity. You give your full effort to the process. You set a genuine standard for what you will accept and what you will not. And then you release the timeline, release the specific shape you decided the outcome must take, and release the idea that your value as a person rises and falls with whether or not it works out. You stay in the work, you stay present, you stay honest, and you stop making every result a referendum on your worth. That is the loop we opened at the beginning of this video. Do you remember? You came here wondering what separates the people who consistently get what they want from those who chase it their entire lives. And the answer is not harder chasing. It is the willingness to act fully while needing nothing from the result to feel whole. The most powerful move you can make in a negotiation, in a relationship, in your own career even, is to be someone who genuinely doesn't need to win in order to stay in the game. Not because you don't care, but because you have chosen to be larger than any single outcome. That is where your real power lies, not in the grip, in the release.